Mohammed Cat Stevens of Tehran.
I've been listening to Radio Liberty on my shortwave radio, and I think it's time to stand up for cultural safety and explain why all good Muslims support it. Cultural safety means never having to say you're sorry for doing things which are part of your culture. This allows us Muslims to continue all sorts of activities like flogging young women for dancing, cutting off young men's limbs, and cutting out tongues for blasphemy, and making death threats against international authors whenever we feel like it. Yes, cultural safety ensures that age-old religious traditions and customs will be retained, no matter how unfashionable amongst freedom lovers they may be in the West. After all, the Maoris in New Zealand use cultural safety to serve their purposes, so why shouldn't we?
That was Mohammed Cat Stevens from Tehran. We'll have another crazy New Freeland van tomorrow, so keep listening to Radio Liberty.
Multimedia.
Headline inflation, core inflation, cutting taxes, surpluses. What a load of rot. Most people wouldn't know a surplus if they fell over one. Run the thing in deficit. Keep piling on those taxes and keep those votes coming in. That's the way to do it. What? What's that? Future generations, you say? Oh, as my mate Maynard keeps reminding me up here, in the long run we'll all be dead.
Well, Barbara, I wonder if you could finally give us your assessment of her from this perspective now in 1995 as a philosopher. You've done that to some extent already, and as a human being.
Let me say as a human... Well, all right, as a philosopher first, she will not be a minor figure in the history of philosophy. I think she will be a very significant one. She has tackled extremely difficult problems and has either solved them or pointed the way to a solution. She's done extremely significant work and will be seen as such, and I believe she's already taught in a lot of universities, even high schools, all around the country and in other countries. Her influence on the present movement towards freedom is not fully understood by most people, but it's enormous, including in the former Iron Curtain countries, where she's been illegally read for many years.
Yes.
As a human being, what I wanted to show in my biography of her was that she was a human being, that she was not a goddess, as some of her fans saw her, nor a devil, as some of her philosophical opponents saw her. That she was a human being who had great virtues and had great flaws. Both of them were fascinating because of their size. Yeah. Also, there is a very distinct way. Ayan's heroes are often said to be unreal, but Ayan was the best representative I can imagine for her heroes to indicate that they could exist. She had the brilliance, the first-handedness, the drive, the endurance, the integrity of the best of her own heroes. And I hope that will be remembered about her, too.
So she lived her philosophy.
Yes, she did, despite the mistakes, as well as she could, which was very well indeed, she did.
Barbara, I wonder if I could prevail upon you finally to favor us with a reading of the final 2 paragraphs of your book, The Passion of Ayn Rand, just before we go.
I'd be delighted. All right. In the late 1940s, describing the success of the Fountainhead, Ayan said, quote, "I did not know that I was predicting my own future when I described the process of Rourke's success. It was as if an underground stream flowed through the country and broke out in sudden springs that shot to the surface at random in unpredictable places," unquote. The stream has become a tidal wave, shooting out in every direction and to every continent of the world. The story of the influence of a series of novels on philosophic thought is unprecedented in literary history. It is a saga worthy of an Ayn Rand novel. It is Ayan's best statement of the power of the lone individual. As one observes the bright sparks of thought that emanated from one mind and one ferocious will continuing to send out their lengthening rays, perhaps one can also see a small, passionately stalwart figure marching steadfastly forward into history.
Barbara Brandon, it's been a great pleasure and a great thrill to talk to you. I thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Barbara Brandon, author of The Passion of Ayn Rand.
Radio Liberty, where the tide of socialism is permanently out.
Time at 7 to 9. Let's look again at this morning's editorial. Scott Wilson's soapbox on Monday about the social contract set me thinking. It's an idea that was originated by that old curmudgeon Thomas Hobbes, 1588 to 1679, and is still used as a justification for state despotism today. Hobbes believed that human beings were pretty rotten creatures who, left to their own devices in what he called the state of nature, would simply ride roughshod over each other in the rampant quest for self-preservation and make life for all solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. The only sensible thing for men to do in order to prevent that, said Hobbes, is to reach agreement among themselves to forswear their rights under the state of nature and delegate them to a third party, which, if the arrangement is to have any hope of working at all, must wield absolute power in order to stop men riding roughshod over each other. That third party can be a monarch or a parliament, but its power must be absolute. Hobbes acknowledged that rotten men, vested with such power, might well use it in a rotten way, but too bad. Better that than the state of nature. Now, as any libertarian who engages in political argument will tell you, this idea pops up regularly to this day. Simon Upton has explicitly endorsed it. The Alliance relies on it, even if its members have never heard of Thomas Hobbes. You've signed a social contract, they say, when you rail against the Leviathan's powers. You've agreed to have the state run much of your life. And when you reply, when did I do that? They say, when you accepted the benefits of the state education system that has stood you in such good stead. How on earth does that constitute the signing of a social contract? You respond. It was forced on me. I had no choice. The essence of any contract is that it's entered into voluntarily. Oh, well, maybe so, they reply. But you didn't run away, and you still don't run away. You implicitly sign the contract by staying here. If you don't like the way things are, you should simply leave. Well, that's ingenious, but it doesn't wash either. For one thing, there are few places on earth to which one can repair if one is seeking a society based on purely libertarian principles. For another, that isn't the point anyway. Staying in a place doesn't imply approval of everything about it, nor does it imply that you've signed a contract signifying such approval. One of the reasons I stay here is that we still have freedom of speech. Yes, it may be restricted. One is not permitted to say things that could be construed as inciting racial disharmony, for example. But there is not yet a law against saying things that could be construed as socially destabilizing, which is undoubtedly the way state thought police would construe the dissemination of libertarian ideas. And until there is such a law, I'll stay here and disseminate libertarian ideas. The idea that I'm bound by some invisible, intangible social contract to keep my trap shut is nonsensical and vicious. If I'm going to accept a social contract at all, I'll opt for John Locke's version of it, put forward a few years after Thomas Hobbes. His version is that all citizens consent to be ruled by a government elected by a majority as long as that government protects the natural rights of citizens to their life, liberty and property. If a government doesn't do that and instead violates the natural rights of the citizens, Locke said, then it should be overthrown. Now, if someone presents me with a contract saying that, I'll happily sign it. But I'd want to attach a caveat to it. Hobbes, you see, believed that there was only one natural right, namely the right to self-preservation derived from instinct. Locke had a much more developed view of rights, recognizing the link between life, action and property, but he believed they were derived from God, a supernatural source. Well, that just won't do. It took another 300 years for someone to properly link Locke's rights, life, liberty and property, to Hobbes's origin, nature, specifically man's nature. So the slip of paper I'd staple onto John Locke's social contract would say, read your Ayn Rand.